I'm 73 years old, and only recently did I understand that fear, not failure, is what quietly ruined my life. Not in a dramatic way, not in a way anyone could point to and say that's where it went wrong. It was quieter than that, polite, reasonable, and visible. I'm telling you this now because there isn't much time left for me to pretend I don't know it anymore. Most of my friends are gone. Some from ailments, some from accidents, some simply from age. The circle keeps shrinking, and when it does, you start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You start replaying things you were too busy to notice before. I used to believe I lived carefully, responsibly. I told myself I was protecting what mattered, but I see now I was mostly protecting myself from discomfort. I wake up earlier than I used to. Not because I want to, but because my body insists. The house is quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear the refrigerator hum and your own breathing. I sit at the kitchen table most mornings with a cup of coffee I barely taste anymore. I look at the same crack in the wall. It's been there for years. I never fixed it. I always thought I would later. That crack feels like a summary of my life. There's so many things I meant to come back to. I didn't grow up thinking I was afraid. I thought fear was for people who froze, people who didn't try. I worked, I showed up, I paid bills, I stayed out of trouble. From the outside, my life looked steady. But inside, I was always choosing the safer version of every decision. I took the job that paid enough instead of the one that interested me. I stayed quiet in conversations where I wanted to speak. I stayed in relationships that were comfortable instead of honest. I told myself I was being mature. In my 20s, I worked in an office with beige walls and clocks that always seemed to move too slowly. I remember the sound of typing, the smell of old paper, the way everyone pretended they weren't bored. I had dreams then, nothing grand, just small things, writing, traveling, starting something of my own. But every time I considered it, fear spoke first. What if it fails? What if people judge you? What if you look foolish? What if you lose what you already have? So I stayed. I told myself stability was more important than curiosity. In my 30s, I got married. We were kind to each other. We weren't deeply honest, but we were polite. We avoided arguments. We avoided difficult conversations. We avoided ourselves. I thought love meant not disturbing the peace. So when something hurt me, I swallowed it. When something bothered her, she did the same. We became very good at not upsetting each other, and very bad at knowing each other. We had routines, grocery shopping on Sundays, dinner at 6, television afterward, sleep. Years passed that way. Not unhappy, just unfinished. I remember holding our first child. I felt something real then, something strong. But even in that moment, fear followed. Fear of being a bad parent, fear of not earning enough, fear of losing control of the careful life I had built. So I worked more. I missed school events, not all of them, just enough. I told myself I would make it up later. Later became a habit. In my 40s, my body still worked well. My mind was busy. I believed time was generous. I believed I was still early in my story. When my wife once asked me if I was happy, I laughed and said, "Of course." I didn't ask her back. Not because I didn't care, because I was afraid of what her answer might require me to change. Fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers, "Let's keep things the way they are." I watched my children grow without really noticing the speed. One year they needed me, the next they barely looked back when leaving. I thought independence meant success. Now I know it also means distance. I missed small conversations that never came back. I postponed apologies that expired. I delayed affection because I assumed it was understood. Fear taught me to assume instead of express. In my 50s, my marriage ended quietly, No big fight, no dramatic betrayal. Just two people who had slowly become strangers. We sat at the table one evening and agreed we were tired. Not angry, just tired. I remember feeling relieved and ashamed for feeling relieved. I told myself it was better this way. I didn't ask what fear had already taken from us. After that, I lived alone. I told myself I liked the quiet, and sometimes I did, but I also noticed how long it had been since anyone asked how I was and waited for the answer. I stayed busy, work, chores, television, sleep, the rhythm of avoidance. Fear had become so normal, I no longer recognized it. I avoided deep friendships, I avoided vulnerability, I avoided saying what I wanted. Not because I didn't want connection, because I was afraid of needing it. I told myself I was strong. I told myself I was independent. I told myself I didn't want to be a burden. But what I was really doing was shrinking my life to a size that felt safe. Then my father died. Not suddenly, slowly, over months. I visited him in a small room that smelled like medicine and old books. He looked smaller each time. One day he asked me if I was happy. I gave him the same answer I had given my wife years earlier. Of course. He looked at me for a long time. He didn't argue. He just nodded. That look followed me home. After he passed, I found letters he never sent, pages of things he wanted to say, regrets he never spoke, love he assumed we knew. I recognized myself in every line. That's when I first felt the beginning of clarity. Not a loud realization, just a quiet weight. I started noticing how often I said, maybe later, how often I waited, how often I stayed silent. Fear had not ruined my life in one moment. It had done it gently, over decades, by convincing me that now was never the right time. I'm 73 years old now. My body reminds me daily that time is no longer generous. My hands shake sometimes when I pour water. My knees complain when I stand. My memory skips in places. But my understanding has never been clearer. Fear did not protect me. It delayed me. It kept me polite when I should have been honest. It kept me busy when I should have been present. It kept me comfortable when I should have been alive. I don't say this with anger. I say it with sorrow, and with a strange kind of gratitude that I can still say it at all. There are things I can't repair now, people I can't reach, words I can't place back in the past where they belonged. And that's the hardest part. Not that I was afraid, but that I didn't know I was choosing fear over life. The moment that finally made everything clear didn't arrive with noise. It came quietly, like everything else. It was a phone call from my daughter. We hadn't spoken properly in months. We exchanged polite messages, birthdays, holidays, short sentences that meant very little. She called to tell me she was moving farther away, different city, different life. Her voice was calm, careful, like she was speaking to someone she didn't want to upset. I remember holding the phone and realizing I didn't know how to talk to my own child anymore. Not because we were angry, because we were unfamiliar. After the call ended, I sat in the same chair for a long time. I didn't cry, I didn't panic. I just felt something settle inside me. A certainty. This distance wasn't sudden. It had been growing quietly for years. Every time I chose work over conversation, every time I chose silence over honesty, every time I stayed fine over being present. Fear had told me I was doing the responsible thing, but responsibility without presence is just absence with a better excuse. I started remembering small moments, her asking me to watch something she had made as a child and me saying later, her waiting at the door when I came home and me walking past because I was tired, her talking about feelings I didn't know how to answer. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't neglectful. I was just unavailable.
and unavailability feels the same as indifference when you're on the other side. That night, I walked through my house slowly. I touched old furniture, opened drawers, looked at photographs. So many moments frozen in time, so many of them taken by someone else while I stood nearby but not inside the moment. I realized something painful. I had been present in my own life only in fragments. I had been physically there, but emotionally I was always somewhere safer, less exposed, less vulnerable. Fear convinced me that protecting myself was the same as living wisely. But protection has a cost. It makes your world smaller. It makes your connections thinner. It makes your memories quieter. I thought back to opportunities I declined, not because I didn't want them,